And no matter what services or products a company provides, we can all be a force for good. We all can have a reason to say, I'm going to bring these goals, these values, this mission to life, not through sharing it on an email signature, but through my decision making.
Welcome to another episode of Women Worldwide. Thank you for showing up, for tuning in, and for being here. We appreciate you. Well, it's another week, a new guest with an incredible story and a lot of advice for you. So let's get to it. The topic today is ethics and compliance. What do you need to know about being an ethical role model and all of those important business decisions that you're making that affect your company, your employees, your customers, and your reputation? Well, that is the segue to today's guest today. Joining me on the show is Richard Bistrong. Richard is the founder and CEO of Frontline Anti-Bribery. Although he spent his past years as an international sales executive, today he consults, writes, and speaks on the topic of anti-bribery, ethics, and compliance. And he does it from a front-line perspective because he has real-world experience. Richard shares his journey from corruption to compliance, and he is raising awareness about the importance of ethical decision-making with leaders today. I could go on and on about Richard, as you can tell. I have shared the stage with him. We've worked together. He's a friend, he is a colleague, and somebody who I respect, and I'm a big fan of the impact that he's creating. So Richard, welcome. Welcome to Women Worldwide.
Deirdre, it's an honor and pleasure to join you and the Women Worldwide community today. Thank you for the kind introduction. And as you know, this is very much a mutual admiration society. And as I'll share, you had such a major role in impacting my life and trajectory. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. It has been just the honor and privilege of my career to be on that journey with you and to watch and to see what you have done with your work. And I think that's where maybe we should start, Richard. Can you share a little bit about your journey from corruption to compliance?
Sure. Deirdre, I spent my career as a sales executive. Half of my career was focused on the US market, and the second half of my career, so I'm going to date myself a little bit, from 1997 to 2007, I was an international sales vice president, flying all over the world, overseas 250 days a year. Part of that time I was living in the United Kingdom. And my experience is not all that unique as an international sales executive, faced with the pressure to succeed in some markets where business opportunity and risk are intertwined, where sometimes someone might think of themselves as in the middle of competing corporate objectives between that pressure to succeed and that pressure to do it right. Well, unfortunately for me, and due to no one's fault but my own, I took ethics and compliance into my own hands. And when I felt that tension, I decided to untangle it on my own instead of reaching out for support to the people who wanted me successful and safe to unpack those ethical dilemmas. And ultimately, due to having that debate about pressure and keeping it to myself, I became the target of a number of criminal investigations in the United States and in the United Kingdom. And in 2007, I pleaded guilty to bribing foreign officials, which is in violation of a US anti-bribery law called the FCPA, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, and equivalent laws in the United Kingdom. I cooperated with law enforcement from day one. I did it. I was guilty. So I wanted to face justice instead of delay it. And in 2012, I was sentenced for those crimes in U.S. federal district court. And I ended up spending 14 and a half months in prison, which could have been decades had I not cooperated. So I definitely made the right decision. And where I'll end this chapter is during my incarceration, thinking about what I would like life to look at when I was released from prison, which would be in December 2013. I did all this research about books I wanted to read, making good use of my time. And because in the federal prison system, you can have books mailed into the institution. And two of those books were putting the public back in public relations and social media in public relations. And this little note, these notes that I'll talk about more later, these are the notes that I took in prison about your books, and I would mail the books and the notes back home so I'd have them when I arrived. So that's where that journey from corruption to compliance sort of started, ended, and restarted again.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for showing the books. It's fascinating the way that we met. And when you reached out to me, it was really interesting because I wanted to learn so much about what had happened and where you were going. And your trajectory and the path that you took has been nothing short of amazing. And, you spoke of the pressure, and there's so much pressure, Richard, out there now for business leaders. And this is probably the first time that I'm sharing this with the Women Worldwide audience, but I am coming out with a book called Answers for Ethical Marketers. You have graciously written the foreword for that book. And there's something that you put in the foreword that strikes me that I'd like you to share with everybody about being a force for good. From what you've learned and what you're doing, what does that mean? How can more leaders be a force for good?
Well, Deirdre, if you look at any organization, particularly now, and publicly listed ones, you go to the website, you're going to see values, you're going to see our mission statement,
Right.
our purpose, all of these wonderful aspirational goals that organizations have. And I say aspirational because if they just stay on what might be a fancy wall poster or an intranet message, they don't come to life. So I think when everyone in an organization, particularly business leaders, realize that those values stay aspirational unless they come to life through their decision making, and that's when we really need to think of what is my role in the organization and how can I be a force for good? How can I have a positive impact both internally on my peers and my colleagues, up and down and across the organization? And what's my role for being a force for good in society? How am I adding to values? How am I making a contribution? And no matter what services or products a company provides, we can all be a force for good. We all can have a reason to say, I'm going to bring these goals, these values, this mission to life, not through sharing it on an email signature, but through my decision making.
Right. Adding to those values, that's so important. And I believe that adding to values means that you have a set of values that you come into a company with. It's not just adopting the values that they have, and then you bring them to life through your communication and your conduct. So on that note, Richard, the book, Answers for Ethical Marketers, who do you think the ethical marketer is?
So as I shared in the forward, it's a great question. It's also an easy one. Everyone is an ethical marketer. Okay.
That's right. I'm glad you said that.
But here's where it gets measured from my perspective, Deirdre, especially now in a time of crisis or hopefully soon post-crisis environment, when we're trying to recapture market share and to rebuild our businesses, our values are going to get challenged.
Mm-hmm.
These are difficult times. And as we look at recapturing that market share, what do we do when our values get challenged? What are the tough choices that we might face when we're looking at that pressure to succeed and the pressure to comply? And when we're true ethical marketers, we really take a step back, hit the pause button,
Mm-hmm.
and think about our decision making. And as leaders, there's a tendency to think, well, that's the job of our ethics and compliance support function, or we have a legal department that sort of handles challenging decision making. Well, if it's just coming through, when I'm talking ethics and compliance and values, when the only people in an organization are thinking about that are support functions, that's exactly what it sounds like. It sounds like a support function. But when mission, purpose, and values are coming through the voice of business, through the corporate narrative, not just the legal one, that's when it feels like in an organization, large or small, that everyone is an ethical marketer because it's coming through the voice of business.
So Richard, with all the pressures that you've experienced and even looking at what professionals experience today, maybe would you be able to share an aha moment that stuck with you, that has guided you, that you can share with everybody?
Sure, Deirdre. So now I'm going to pull out those notes from social media and public relations. And it talked about giving people a reason to talk about your experience and making it easier for that conversation to take place. And you're talking about arousing passion. And that was a real aha and game changer moment for me, to realize that by being transparent about an experience, because as you share, and spoiler alert in your book, mistakes happen, right?
Right.
But when we're transparent about those mistakes, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that we can take our experience and experiences and make them learning moments for the entire organization. So if there's one thing I learned, is we don't have to fear our mistakes. If we embrace them, if we're transparent about them, well, that's really another great measure of being an ethical marketer. When we talk about some tough moments and maybe thinking back and saying, I might have done it another way. So let's talk about why I made that decision and to help people who face similar challenges.
Absolutely. And it's all about helping people. That's what it comes down to, because when you can be that transparent, there's other leaders out there who are facing similar situations, who don't know which way to turn. And I think a lot of this, Richard, comes down to being open to not take it on yourself almost, and to ask others for help. Is that the difference in the decision making today versus decision making of the past?
I think so. And I have what I call my involuntary board of directors, which is a group of people, yourself included, that I can reach out to if I'm facing a tough position and a tough decision, and hitting that pause button, slowing things down, because that's the other pressure we face, right? The need for speed versus the need to do it right. And to say, what do you think about this? And to solicit open feedback. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to act on everything you hear, but by having a wide and divergent board, so to speak, of people that will give you feedback, as a team, we're going to make decisions much better than we would individually. So I call them accountability partners.
Oh, I like that.
And does everyone have an accountability partner? And what I like to think about of an accountability partner, Deirdre, is if I'm not calling my accountability partner to share my challenges and how things are going, my accountability partner is calling me. Because as
That's a
Amy,
good partner.
right?
Yes.
As Amy Edmondson shares in the Fearless organization, no news doesn't always mean good news. So we really need to be challenging ourselves.
When
Sure.
you have accountability partners, is that strictly on the professional level, or do you have family involved as well?
So it is a mix of peers, professionals, as well as personal associations and family members. And depending on what type of issue I'm facing, I might reach out to a different set of group. So it flexes with the type of ethical dilemma that I might be facing.
Oh, that's good to know. Richard, as far as challenges, so you've had your challenges and you shared from corruption to compliance. Any challenges now, or is everything just goes all so smoothly with what you're doing? And you're doing a lot.
So Deirdre, not to timestamp us, but as we record this, we're certainly facing a time of challenge,
Right.
in dealing with the coronavirus and how we communicate and how we make ethical decisions when we're not all together.
Right.
And thinking that taking what might have been in-person engagement, interactions, and training, and to say, okay, I just need to move that over to a virtual platform. Well, there's a lot of behavioral research that talks about how that doesn't work. And if we want to inspire and influence people digitally, it's a much different skill set than when we're together, where we can read our body chemistry and have coffee breaks, right?
Definitely. It's very hard to see what bodies are doing when you're getting just from the shoulders up, right? And where we're channeling nervous energy. It's really interesting. Well, that is so true. I mean, all in all, though, I think we're settling into the fact that, yes, Zoom is a part of our world and experiencing other platforms. Have you done any live streams on StreamYard? Have you tried that platform yet?
I have not, and it's on my list of new digital delivery systems and platforms to take a look at. So thank you for keeping that in my inbox.
Awesome, awesome. And so, Richard, with everything that you're doing, because before COVID, you were traveling, I want to say every week. I would go to your Instagram and I would see, photos of where you were, beautiful places all around the world, people that you were with. And now you're showing up doing, I'm sure, I think digital seminars and keynotes and whatnot. How do you stay focused and motivated to get done everything that you're doing?
Well, it's more of a challenge than I would have thought because, traveling the world, as you well said, there was enough downtime during, long flights and after presentations to sort of think, catch up, relax a little bit, where now it's much easier to calendar back to back to back meetings. So
Yes.
I'm finding now that I really need to be more disciplined, literally about blocking off time on my calendar for thinking and reading and doing research about digital inspiration. There's some great books. There's some great behavioral research out there. I'm also launching a number of new licensed video content for e-learning.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So
tell us a little bit more about that.
So I've had a wonderful partnership with MasterCard, and we've produced 2 commercial versions of licensed in-house e-learning training on issues like anti-bribery and third-party interactions, and how you can have red flags traveling all over the world, engaging with third parties, and you can also have them right at your desk if you don't pay attention.
Sure.
So
that's interesting.
Thank you. It's about keeping our ethical radar on, and we're now producing our third video, and I'm also working on a smaller series of shorter workforce vignettes as well. So I'm learning a lot about hardware and software when it comes to filming and producing.
That is really great. I like that you said keeping that ethical radar on. I think I refer to that in my book as the ethics GPS, right? You need that. You've got to keep it on, whether you're in a country far away or sitting right at your desk. That's an important point, Richard. You mentioned a book before that you had read, and maybe any books that you're reading that you want to share with the Women Worldwide audience?
There's a book that I found really helpful. It's tableside here. And what's really interesting about this book is it was written in 2018, called Can You Hear Me? How to Connect with People in a Virtual World by Nick Morgan.
Oh,
and I think there are some really good learning moments in here. And I love his introduction where he says, if we're so connected, why do I feel so alone? And I think that captures the book's spirit.
Oh my goodness. Is Nick Morgan also the one who wrote something about either power cues or the name sounds so familiar.
He wrote a book called Give Your Speech, Change the World, and Power Cues.
Oh my gosh, I read that book. It was really good. If you haven't read that one, put that on your radar. Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And Richard, I can't even believe we're at the parting advice question. What parting advice can you give to the Women Worldwide Network?
I would think of two things. To remember that ethics, compliance, values, purpose sounds so much louder when it's coming through the voice of business, not just through the legal narrative or the compliance narrative, but through the corporate narrative. So just think about, as leaders, how you can inspire your entire organization, and I'm speaking internally and externally,
sure,
to be ethical marketers. And also, if we know that our values are going to get inevitably challenged, why not talk about it in the safe zone? Do a little role playing, because what research has demonstrated is the more we talk about ethical dilemmas when there's not one at hand, the more likelihood we're going to act on our values and purpose when we are facing a crisis.
That is a great point. Excellent advice. Richard, where can people find out more about you and all of the great work you're doing?
So it's pretty much, at Richard Bistrong, whether that's Twitter, Instagram, my website. I've started a newsletter, and I won't clog up your email box, I promise, but I often write book reviews for a number of different periodicals. So I welcome everyone to connect with me on LinkedIn, any of the social media platforms, and as I like to share, to keep the conversation going.
Absolutely. And I hope everybody connects with you. And I have to get on your newsletter. I'm going to go sign up. So everybody sign up for that newsletter. Richard, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your real world frontline perspective. We really appreciate it.
It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you, Deirdre, and thank you to the Women Worldwide community.
Thank you. And to all of you, thank you for tuning in and for keeping the conversations going and for always sharing. And if you want to receive Women Worldwide updates, you can go to our website, womenworldwideshow.com, and you'll be able to sign up and get the updates. Okay, friends, until our next episode, of course, be safe, stay focused, energized, and feeling empowered. Thank you.